They handed my wife a toilet brush the moment the wedding music faded. I had paid $150,000 for that afternoon, for my son's smile, for my family's dignity. But what my daughter-in-law gave back was humiliating silence. Martha stood there, leaning on her cane, her dress stained, and my son turned his face away, as if he had never had a mother at all. I did not yell. I did not make a scene. I simply smiled and made a decision. Everything would stop here. Before I go on, take a moment to subscribe and leave a comment telling me which country you're listening from. Your presence here helps me keep telling this story, slowly and honestly. And now, let me return to that afternoon, the moment when everything began to slip off its course. I stood a few meters away from them, close enough to hear Vanessa's heels tapping steadily on the marble floor, far enough that no one would think I was paying attention. The crystal chandeliers above the grand hall reflected off glasses of deep red wine, making everything look flawless, like a promotional photograph. People say Napa Valley at sunset can hide every imperfection. That afternoon, it hid nothing at all. Vanessa did not call Martha by her name. She only tilted her head and lowered her voice, the way someone gives instructions to a temporary staff member. I saw my wife's hand tighten around her cane. Her knee not fully healed, yet trembled ever so slightly. That was always Martha. When cornered, she chose silence over resistance, because she believed silence kept the peace for our child. I knew that VIP restroom well. I was the one who signed the renovation contract 6 months earlier, at Vanessa's personal request. Italian tiles, natural stone sinks, a mirror large enough to reflect both pride and pretense. She had said it needed a standard worthy of the family. I did not ask which family she meant. Martha walked slowly, small steps, as if she were apologizing to the floor for disturbing it. A young server handed her a pair of rubber gloves and the brush. He avoided her eyes. I understood that feeling. When people know they are witnessing something wrong, but lack the courage to stop it, they look away. I did not follow her. I stayed where I was, not because I did not care, but because I wanted to see everything through to the end. That had been my habit for 40 years as an engineer. When a structure shows signs of cracking, you do not turn away. You stand there, measure, observe, and wait to see how it will collapse. From where I stood, I saw Ethan leaning against a stone column, a champagne glass in his hand. My son wore the suit I had chosen, the cufflinks I gave him the day he graduated from law school. He looked toward the restroom once, just once. That look was not anger. It was not compassion either. It was calculation. If I step in now, what happens next? Then he turned away and smiled politely at an elderly guest. In that moment I understood a bitter paradox. I had raised a son who could analyze risk perfectly, but I had failed to teach him how to stand on the side of what is right. And the second paradox hurt even more. I was the one who paid for the stage where my wife was being humiliated. The music began again, soft, gentle, as if it were lulling everyone to sleep. People kept raising their glasses, kept offering congratulations. An old friend patted my shoulder and said the wedding was upper class done right. I nodded. I did not say that this standard had just been built on my wife's knees. When Martha returned, she did not look at anyone. She washed her hands for a long time, carefully wiped her dress, trying to erase the stains that remained. Vanessa glanced over briefly, then adjusted her veil, as if she had just completed a minor task not worth mentioning. No thank you, no trace of regret. Humiliation, when performed naturally enough, requires no explanation. Martha stood beside me. I could feel her breathing, heavier than usual. She did not cry. That hurt me more than any tears ever could. She whispered that she was fine, that we should not make a scene on our son's happy day. I nodded. I placed my hand over hers. I said I understood, and I truly did. I understood that some celebrations are built on another person's endurance, and the price of that is always higher than people expect. I looked around the hall one more time. The imported flowers, the private orchestra, the menu I had reviewed line by line. Everything ran smoothly, like a machine lubricated by money and silence. But I also saw small cracks, very small ones, visible only to someone standing outside. And I knew that, from the moment Martha was pushed into that corner, this machine had begun to run off course. I smiled, just as everyone expected. No one knew that inside my mind a door had just closed. No noise, no announcement. Only a cold, clear decision, as precise as a final engineering blueprint. The party went on. The lights stayed bright. But for me, the most important part of that afternoon ended the moment the brush was placed in my wife's hand. I did not leave the reception hall right away. I stayed there a little longer, as if my body had not yet accepted what had just happened. Martha sat down on a chair near the window. She rested her cane against the armrest, quietly rubbing her knee. The sunset fell across her face, revealing the wrinkles I had known for more than 30 years of marriage. Those lines had never made her look weak to me, but in that moment I realized something painful. I had let her stand alone for far too long. Not just in that restroom, but inside this family. The music kept playing steady and smooth. The host began talking about the bride and groom's perfect love story. I listened and felt completely out of place. I knew that story. I was the one who paid for every detail to make it look perfect on stage. But behind it there were parts cut out, chapters no one wanted to tell. I remembered the afternoon Vanessa first came to our house. She walked in, looked around the living room, and asked if the house was fully paid off. I had smiled back then, thinking she was young, used to numbers and business cards. Later I understood that was not curiosity. That was inventory. When Ethan said he wanted the wedding in Napa Valley, I did not object. Vanessa said plainly that she did not want a regular ceremony. She sent me a list. Venue, flowers, wine, band, guest list. At the bottom was one number, 150,000 U.S. dollars, and a short line beneath it, to match the standard. I did not ask whose standard. I signed the check. I withdrew the money from our retirement fund. The part Martha and I had planned to use for quiet years at the end of our lives. I told her this would be the last time we did something like this for our child. She nodded. As always, Martha had always believed that giving was how you kept family close. It was not just the wedding. A year earlier, Ethan had called me from New York. He said the real estate market had an opportunity. Vanessa wanted an apartment in Manhattan, close to the office, good for appearances. I bought it. The apartment was put in Ethan's name, temporarily for paperwork reasons. I trusted my son. I believed that trust would be returned with gratitude, or at least respect. That trust did not begin to crack over money. It cracked over whispers. I walked past the back garden where Vanessa's family was gathered. I was not trying to listen, but when people speak loudly enough, the truth finds its way to you. Vanessa was talking to her mother. Her tone was light, almost cheerful. She said that after the wedding, everything would fall into place, that the two old country people had fulfilled their role, that there would be a way to move them somewhere cheaper, quieter, so they would not be in the way. She laughed, as if she were talking about rearranging furniture. Her mother nodded, asking about the remaining money. Vanessa answered without hesitation. She said Ethan understood, that he knew staying quiet was the smart choice. I stood behind the trees, feeling as if a curtain had just been pulled from my eyes. Ethan understands. Those words stayed with me. I thought of my son's expression when Martha walked toward the restroom. Not fear, not anger, the look of someone used to choosing the path with the least risk for himself. I did not step out and confront them. I did not see the need. Some truths, when exposed too early, lose their weight. I went back into the reception hall where everything continued exactly as planned. Martha looked up when I sat beside her. She quietly asked if I was okay. I said I was. I said we would be leaving soon. She looked surprised, but did not ask why. That was what I treasured most about her. She did not need explanations for every decision. She only needed to know that I was not leaving her behind. When the host invited me to give a speech, I shook my head. I said I was tired. No one questioned it. An older man who paid that much money was allowed to be tired. No one knew that I did not want to say words I would later regret. I looked around one last time. Satisfied faces, laughter right on cue, and I understood something simple and painful. I had paid to buy my place in my son's life, and I had paid far too much, not just with money, but with years of silence. When I stood up and helped Martha outside, she held my hand tighter than usual. That hand trembled slightly. I knew she was trying not to disturb anyone. not to ruin the big day, and I also knew that if I did nothing now, our silence would become permission. Outside in the parking lot, the air was cooler. I opened the car door and helped Martha into the front seat. When I closed the door, I did not get in right away. I stood there and took a deep breath. In my mind, everything was clear. The cracks I had noticed in the reception hall, in the back garden, in my son's eyes, they had all connected into a single line. I knew I was about to do something that would end many things, but for the first time that day, I did not hesitate. I got into the car, closed the door, and said to Martha, in the calmest voice, "I could manage. Things will change. From here on." I did not start the engine right away. Martha sat still, both hands resting on her lap, staring straight ahead. She did not ask what I meant by change. That silence was not fear. It was trust. And that trust was the reason I could not turn back. I took out my phone. The screen lit up. Familiar names. Connections built over a lifetime of work. My hands did not shake. At that moment, I was no longer angry in the way people imagine anger. I was clear to the point of coldness. The first call was to the event company. I spoke slowly, one word at a time. I confirmed the contract, the final payment terms. I reminded them of the timeline, and that the remaining transfer had not yet been made. On the other end, the manager sounded briefly surprised, then cautious. He asked if there was a problem. I said there was, and that problem meant everything had to stop, right before the main course was served. I ended the call. No further notice. No long explanations. In my career, I learned that the most important decisions do not require many words. The second call was to the car service. I read back the contract number, confirmed the pickup time for the bride and groom after the reception. Then I canceled it. The coordinator asked if there had been a mistake. I said no. I said the plan had changed. When they mentioned the cancellation fee, I told them to send the bill. There are prices I am willing to pay, as long as I do not pay with my wife's dignity. Martha turned to look at me. There was no panic in her eyes, only the familiar concern of someone who has spent her life thinking of others. I placed my hand over hers and said we would be fine. I said nothing more. I did not want her carrying the weight of decisions I should have made long ago. The next call was to the hotel in Italy. The honeymoon had been booked in advance, an ocean view room, under my name. I asked them to cancel everything. The receptionist tried to stay polite, asked for the reason. I said the trip was no longer appropriate. That was enough. With each call, I felt a door closing. Not loudly, not dramatically, just the quiet end of privileges I had given too easily. When I set the phone down, the car filled with the soft sound of wind through a narrow gap. Martha took a deep breath. She said quietly that she did not want us to do anything that would put Ethan in an awkward position. I turned to her and said that the awkwardness had existed for a long time. Today was simply the day it showed itself. I said that some things, if not stopped in time, will go on, until there is nothing left to protect. I thought I was done, but there was one more call, the one I had delayed for years. I found my lawyer's name, the man who had stayed with me since I retired. I did not circle around the point. I said I wanted to activate the recovery clause on the assets temporarily transferred to my son. I gave him the address of the Manhattan apartment. I said the circumstances had changed. On the other end, he was silent for a few seconds. Then he confirmed what we had discussed long ago, as if reading from an old blueprint. I listened and nodded, even though he could not see me. That clause had been created as a safeguard. I never thought I would use it, but I realized something then. Family life, like any structure, also needs safety measures. When the call ended, I leaned back in my seat. Only then did my body begin to feel tired, not from age, but from tension held in for far too long. Martha placed her hand on my arm. She said she did not want to be the reason a father and son grew apart. I told her she was not the reason. She was simply pulled into a story that should never have existed. We sat there for a few more minutes. From a distance, I could still hear the music from the reception hall. I imagined trays being carried out, then stopped. Confused looks, whispered questions. I felt no satisfaction, only the sense that an old order was breaking, and another one not yet fully shaped was beginning to form. My phone vibrated. A message from the event manager, asking if we could talk in person. I did not reply. There was nothing left to say. The most important decisions had already been made, in silence. Martha rested her head against the seat and closed her eyes. I knew she was tired. So was I. But it was not the exhaustion of regret. It was the feeling after standing upright again, after a long slide you did not want to admit was happening. I started the engine. The headlights came on, illuminating the road out of the estate. I did not look back. In the rearview mirror, the lights from the reception hall still shone brightly. But to me, they already felt distant. I drove away. Slowly, steadily, the same way I had lived most of my life. As the car passed through the gate, I knew I had just closed a chapter, not with anger, but with action, and I understood that what I had done was only the beginning. The consequences, good or bad, would come soon enough. But at least this time, I was no longer standing still while my wife was pushed into the dark. We had not gone far when my phone vibrated again. This time it was not a polite message or a cautious question. Ethan's name filled the screen, again and again, urgent, relentless, as if each ring carried panic that had finally caught up with him. I did not answer right away. I pulled the car over, shut off the engine. Some confrontations should not happen while the wheels are still moving. Martha opened her eyes and looked at me. She understood. I showed her the phone. She nodded very slightly. No objection. No attempt to stop me. That quiet agreement told me I was not alone in this decision. When I answered, Ethan's voice came fast and tight. He asked what was happening, why things inside the reception hall were falling apart, why the event manager said the final payment had been stopped. I listened without interrupting. When he paused to breathe, I said, "We were in the parking lot." I said if he wanted to talk, he should come out. Less than 5 minutes later, I saw them. Ethan walked ahead, moving quickly. Vanessa followed behind him, her wedding dress trailing along the ground, no longer lifted with care the way it had been moments earlier. The lights from the reception hall spilled into the parking lot, casting uneven patches of brightness and shadow, like a painting someone had not finished yet. Vanessa spoke first. She talked about embarrassment, about the guests, about important connections. Her voice was higher than usual, not from anger, but from fear. I recognized it immediately. When money pulls away, polished words lose their footing. Ethan stood beside her looking at me, then at Martha. He did not know where to stand. I saw the confusion in him, but it no longer softened me the way it once had. I did not argue. I did not explain every phone call. I only said that I had stopped what was in my name. I said that certain boundaries had been crossed long ago, and tonight was simply when they became visible. Vanessa laughed, a short, sharp sound. She said I was overreacting, that it was just a small misunderstanding, that Martha had volunteered to help. I looked at my wife. Martha said nothing. She stood straighter than I expected, even as she leaned on her cane. Her silence was the only answer I needed. I opened the car door and took out a thick envelope I had prepared earlier. I did not wave it around. I did not use it like a weapon. I held it with both hands, the same way I had held important documents my entire life. I told Vanessa that before calling it a misunderstanding, she might want to explain a few things. I placed the envelope on the hood of the car. Inside were copies, receipts, emails, things I had gathered quietly over many months. I said I knew about the items that had disappeared from our home, Martha's mother's keepsakes, things with no market value, yet sold quickly all the same. Vanessa fell silent. For the first time since I met her, she did not have an answer ready. Ethan looked at the envelope, then at me. His expression shifted from confusion to alarm. I said I did not need excuses. The numbers were clear enough. Dates of sale, accounts receiving the money. All of it matched the personal debts Vanessa had kept hidden. Vanessa said it was only temporary, that she planned to buy everything back later. I nodded. I said that some things once sold no longer belong to you, no matter how many reasons you use to justify it. I turned to Ethan. I stopped talking about the envelope. I talked about his silence. The times he stood outside the door, the times he turned away. I said I had believed I was raising a man who understood responsibility. But tonight I realized I had been wrong. I did not use harsh words. I spoke the truth. Slowly. One sentence at a time. And that truth was enough to make him lower his head. I told him the Manhattan apartment would be secured under the clause he had signed, not as punishment, but to end a dependence that had gone on far too long. I said that from this moment on his path was his responsibility. No more safety net that I had quietly stretched beneath him. Vanessa reacted more strongly. She said I was destroying their future. I looked her straight in the eye. I said, "A future is not destroyed by losing things that never truly belong to you. It is only exposed." Martha stepped forward. Just one step. She did not say much. She only said she was tired and that she wanted to go home. Her voice was calm, no resentment. That calmness made every argument unnecessary. I folded the envelope and put it back in the car. I said this conversation ended here, not because I had nothing more to say, but because I refused to turn this parking lot into another stage. I opened the door for Martha and helped her inside. As I closed it, I saw Ethan standing still, unsure whether to move forward or step back. Vanessa watched the car, her face stripped of the confidence she once wore so easily. I started the engine. This time I did not stop. As we drove away, I felt no victory, only the sense that something had finally been put back where it belonged. A family secret had been brought into the light, not to cause more harm, but to stop the harm from spreading further. In the rearview mirror, the Napa Valley estate slowly disappeared into the dark, and with it, a part of my life I had tried to hold together at any cost, quietly came to an end. We did not talk much as we left Napa behind. The streetlights grew farther apart. The tires hummed steadily against the dark pavement. Martha leaned her head against the window, eyes closed. I knew she was not asleep. That was how she let things settle, the way a room quiets down after too much noise. That night, we stayed at a small roadside motel. Nothing fancy. No one knew who we were. Martha said she felt lighter. I did not ask lighter from what. Some feelings lose their meaning the moment you try to name them. 2 weeks later, we were in a small coastal town in Oregon. It had never been part of any plan. Martha saw it through the car window and said she liked the smell of the wind there. I turned in and rented a small wooden cabin facing the sea. Every morning the waves arrived on time, without anyone paying for them to do so. We began living again at a pace that had been postponed for years. Martha walked slowly, but without hurry. She worked on her knee, one step at a time, along the damp sand. I made coffee, sat facing the ocean, read old newspapers. No schedule, no obligation to show up anywhere just to please someone else. After everything was rearranged, money stopped weighing on our minds. I set aside a portion to create a small scholarship fund for local construction students. No large plaques, no announcements, just something I had always wanted to do, and had always put off. Martha said it made her happy to think that someone might begin life a little lighter than we once did. Ethan called. At first the calls came one after another. Then they became less frequent. I did not answer right away, not as punishment, but to give both of us time to face what had happened without using me as the familiar escape. One day, I picked up. The conversation was short, filled with pauses. He said things were harder than he had expected. I said I knew. I did not scold him. I did not promise anything either. I only said that if he wanted to talk as one adult to another, I was open to that. Nothing more. Vanessa never called. I did not wait for her to. Some relationships end without goodbyes. They simply stop when there is nothing left to stand on. One afternoon, Martha and I sat on a wooden bench watching the sun set. The light turned the sea gold, the same color as the sunset in Napa. But the feeling was different. No pressure, no one waiting for us to play a role. Martha held my hand, still thin, but warm. She said she no longer thought about the dress from that day. I nodded. I no longer thought about the brush either. Those memories were where they belonged now. They no longer spilled into the present. I checked my phone. There were still a few missed calls from Ethan. I did not delete them. I did not return them right away either. I turned the screen off and set the phone on the bench. I realized I no longer reacted out of old habit, no longer felt the need to fix everything immediately to keep the peace. Peace, I had learned, sometimes comes from choosing not to act. As night fell, the sea breeze turned cool. Martha leaned against my shoulder. She said that for many years her greatest fear had been becoming a burden. I turned to her. I said she had never been a burden. Only people who lack the ability to value others call someone's presence by names like that. We sat there a long time. No grand conclusions. No clear moral spelled out. At this age, life does not need slogans. It only needs to know where you are and why you are there. Before going inside, I looked at the ocean one last time that day. I thought of the apartment in Manhattan, the estate in Napa, the things once called achievements. They had mattered, but they were no longer the only measure. I did not lose a son. I simply stopped shielding him, so he could learn how to stand on his own. And I did not reclaim dignity by hurting someone else more deeply. I only closed doors that had been opened at the wrong time. Martha squeezed my hand gently, reminding me to come inside because of the cold. I smiled. This time the smile hid nothing. It was simply an acknowledgement that at last we had chosen the right side. My story ends there. Not loudly, not perfectly, but calm enough for me to know that after everything, we kept what mattered most. Each other, and our own sense of worth. If this story made you pause for a moment, please like, subscribe, and share, so stories like this can continue to be told. Every bit of support helps keep these real-life stories alive, slow, and humane. Thank you for staying until the very end, and for listening to my story.